Kingdoms come and kingdoms go, rivers run and rivers flow, by Dancing Lassie. Chapter 3. Mousak finds him the day after Beltane. Jaskier had been traveling with Geralt ever since Sintra, trying his utmost to keep his friend's mind off the child he had unwittingly claimed, and doing his very best to avoid his own family. And this had been rather difficult because they'd suddenly started popping up everywhere. Trava had run straight to Mama after the banquet and told all the prank. Etta had been there, Lady Esther Ribbon to most people, but just Etta to her family. And she's the biggest gossip of all his siblings, so his whole family knows about the disastrous betrothal feast. Scratch that! Every single bloody river in the Northern Kingdom now knows, and probably a few down south as well. Jaskier had sworn that the next time he saw his sister, he was going to strangle her with her own hair ribbons. She'd gone out of her way to avoid them when they passed through Brugge, while Geralt chased some knackers that had started stealing people's shoes, unfortunately while still on their feet. But she'd been the only one. They'd spent a couple of days in Kagan, where Geralt had cleaned some tentacled beast from the sewers with a single-minded fury Jaskier hadn't seen him display before. Trava, the pock-stuffed pig, had wandered into the tavern where they were staying just as Jaskier was requesting a bath for his witcher. "I must say, Jaskier, I still don't understand the appeal, but by the Yaruga, it has put on a good show. I haven't enjoyed a feast that much in about 70 years. Do let me know if there's an encore." Geralt had not been happy when he didn't get his bath. The barman had insisted they leave after Jaskier had thrown himself bodily at his brother and tried to pummel the immortality out of him. All he had to show for it was a split lip and a slight limp, but at least Trava had gone before Geralt had come down to see what all the shouting was about. It was the first time Jaskier had ever been chucked out of a bar. Ina had shown herself when they headed north and had to cross her river to get to Temeria. She had at least waited until Geralt was asleep before pulling herself from her waters and onto the bank, the moonlight causing the water to gleam on her dark, naked skin. She had eyed the Witcher critically before commenting that he was too old for her brother and far too foolish. "One of you ought to have some sense, and it's definitely not you," she had sniffed. Cywith had appeared in Velen, despite his river being all the way up north by Povis. He tried to claim he was on his way to visit Ismena in Vismia, but the river in question had happened to drop in half an hour later, rather spoiling that ruse. They'd actually bought several rounds of drinks for them and had questioned Geralt incessantly on how he'd managed to put up with Jaskier for all these years. Jaskier had fumed in a corner, unable to retaliate on Ismena's territory without causing great offense that would reflect badly on Mama. Ismena must have realized that their teasing had gone too far because he'd paid for their room for the next 3 nights. Jaskier had then been forced to convince Geralt to take a detour via Oxenfurt because old Father Pontar had sent Dupa after him with a request to visit. Of all of his children, why did it have to be Dupa? In life, she had been Princess Vanda, but she had thrown herself into the river when her 4th betrothal had been broken off, and she had convinced herself in a fit of teenage melodrama that no one would ever really love her. History had later shown that the 4 broken engagements had been down to her father playing silly buggers with the neighboring kingdoms, trying to cajole each ally to up their bride price by breaking the agreement and offering his daughter to another man instead. Dupa was prone to being a bit touchy about any perceived criticism, and when she'd failed to get Geralt to talk in anything more than grunts and short sentences, she'd thrown a drink in the Witcher's face and talked the local populace into chasing them out of town. Jaskier was blaming that one solely on Geralt. Old Father Pontar had rooms above the great library in Oxenfurt Academy. At least he'd been satisfied with viewing Geralt from a balcony overlooking the main floor, while the Witcher had been checking the latest research on curing ghoul bites. "Don't let it break your heart," had been the only advice he'd offered Jaskier, twirling the mustache that the bard had so loved to pull as a child. "He seems a nice lad, and it would be a shame to have to watch your mother kill him." The point of the whole thing is that Jaskier has seen more of his relatives and contemporaries in the last 6 months than he has in the last 6 years, and he is not inclined to be cheerful about having to go back to Mama's for Beltane just to see them all again. Normally the life and soul of the party, he secludes himself in a corner with a pitcher of ale and does his best Geralt impression, which only makes his siblings rub him even more. Jaskier fully intends to spend the day after Beltane in a similar fashion, but Adelaide calls out to Mama about a man watching their house from the street. Mama swans over to the window, peering out from behind the flow of her golden hair, and shakes her head ruefully. I believe this one's for you, Buttercup. For him. He hauls himself to his feet and swaggers to the window, taking a sip from his mug as he tries to glance casually down at the street. The Druid from the banquet waves at him. I'd better go see what he wants. Trevor just laughs and steals his mug from his hand. The bastard. I'd been hoping to find you here. Mousesack greets him with a smile as he steps out of the door. Any chance we could have a private chat? May I come in? That is never going to happen. Not if you value your mind. Best follow me if you want a private word. No, bit of advice. Keep your hands to yourself. Jaskier leads them to Auntie Irina's, where her best girl, Kate, is loitering at the entrance to greet customers. Jaskier! She cries happily. Lips that are painted gold leave smudges on his cheeks as she smothers his face in kisses. Here to give the girls a surprise? Need to use Auntie's private rooms. He smiles charmingly at her, bringing her hand to his lips. They are ushered through the main salon, where men and the occasional woman lie on silk-draped couches, while half-naked youths serve them wine and sweetmeats, and up the back staircase behind a tapestry, which leads to Auntie Irina's private sitting room. Unlike the rest of the rooms, it is more comfortable than opulent, and soon they are sitting by the hearth as Katie serves them drinks and honey cakes while making eyes at the Druid. One last kiss on Jaskier's forehead, and she leaves them to it. Jaskier finds himself in the rare situation of not knowing what to say and unwilling to fill the silence. Luckily, Mousesack seems happy to speak first. You must allow me to assuage my curiosity. I never did manage to get a chance to talk to you at the feast. Why? It seems you already know who I am. What Jaskier Pancras, god of the Pancras River. I have long heard of your kind, though you're the first I have ever had the chance to meet. He toasts Jaskier with his wine glass before continuing. If I may ask, what would have happened if I managed to enter that house? Most likely, you never have left. I'd be a prisoner? No, but you never want to leave. Few people have the ability to leave Mama's side once they've experienced the power of a presence. Auntie Irina is rare in that regard. You'd have been hers, and I'd have been sent to explain to the Queen why you now serve another. An enchantment? Some form of compulsion? What a human way of thinking. No, you just wouldn't want to go. I admit I don't quite understand. It may be that the stress of so much family time has made Jaskier a bit reckless, but he decides in that moment that a practical demonstration will be best. After all, best the Druid understand now and not get himself into trouble later by poking his nose in the wrong pond. He lets his human mask drop, allows more than a trickle of his true self to flow through the conscious world. His appearance doesn't actually change, not visibly. No light suddenly shines down upon him, his eyes don't flash, and he doesn't start to glow. But something shifts. Somehow he becomes more Jaskier, and the effect is near instantaneous. Mousesack drops from his chair to his knees, wine spilling across the stone hearth as he discards the glass. He shuffles forward, uncaring of his golden court robe, and grabs Jaskier's hands so that he is able to place kisses upon the palms before pressing them to his cheeks. He rests his forehead on Jaskier's knee, and the bard slams his mask back up. The Druid instantly stiffens, but he does not move from his position. He breathes heavily through his nose a few times before glancing up. Extraordinary! And I'm Mama's youngest. Do you think you can get up? Mousesack considers this for a moment before he apologetically shakes his head. I might need a moment. Jaskier just hums as he cards his fingers through the dark hair in his lap. Eventually, the Druid is able to return to his chair, though his hands shake slightly as he accepts his abandoned glass from the river, filled once more with wine. Sip it and you should feel better. Sorry, I don't often do that. I might have let a bit too much out. It was quite an effective demonstration. Mousesack chuckles ruefully into his glass. How does Geralt manage to spend so long in your presence? He still appeared relatively sane at the banquet. I shrug. At best guess, his mutations and his ignorance of what I am is probably it. You wouldn't believe the lengths people go to when explaining what they do not understand. He probably just thinks I'm an eccentric bard. You've no plans to tell him what you are? Some things, my dear Druid, must be discovered on their own. He may not take that discovery well, Mousak warns, and Jaskier has to control an instinctive wince, because that has been a recurring nightmare of his for the last 9 years. He has no good answer, so he hums a small tune, gazing into the fire as he waits for Mousak to speak again. Jaskier doesn't think he risked this meeting merely to satisfy his curiosity. I do have a piece of exciting news from the Cintran court that may interest you. Princess Pavetta has given birth to a healthy daughter. She came into this world yesterday and already has her grandfather wrapped around her little finger. My congratulations to the family, then. May the new princess be blessed with a happy family and a long, fulfilling life. They toast. I must confess, a foolish part of me did hope that you might have brought a certain friend of ours with you. Jaskier shakes his head. Even if Geralt were not determined to outrun destiny, he would be foolish to come back here when Calantha is no doubt after his blood. The queen can be reasoned with. She has seen the consequences of defying destiny now, which will just make her more determined to thwart it this time. Trust a man who grew up among terrifying, stubborn women. Destiny may intend for Geralt to be involved in the new princess's life, but it will have to play the long game to beat the stubborn wolf and the protective lioness. And the fallout of Destiny's game could be catastrophic. Mousak says earnestly, Is there nothing you can do? No way to persuade him? The very suggestion makes the acidic taste of bile rise up in Jaskier's throat. To do such a thing would be to lose the witcher he adores forever. Geralt would leave him, or worst, be but a suggestible shell of a man that Jaskier loves. He shakes his head forcibly. The Druid sighs, apparently defeated, and they sit in an uncomfortable silence for a while, neither touching their wine. Would you like to see the princess? Mousak asks, seemingly out of nowhere. You do realize Destiny is not going to accept me taking Geralt's place. Jaskier has to check. Perhaps not, but maybe a little godly favor might stand her in good stead for the future. She really is quite adorable. It seems it isn't just her grandfather that the royal baby has wrapped around her little finger. Still, anything is better than going back into a room with his nosy siblings, so he allows Mousak to lead him to the palace. The Druid is obviously still feeling the effects of the river god's show of power earlier, as he has to stop himself from trying to hold Jaskier's hand several times as they weave through the streets. To make things easier on him, Jaskier keeps a hand on the small of his back. They sneak in through the kitchens and up the servants' staircase towards the royal nursery. Neither man feels like trying to explain to the queen what Jaskier is doing in the palace, so he uses a little bit of suggestion to get past the guards and to convince the royal nanny to take a quick nap in her chair. The baby princess lies in her ornate crib, sleeping peacefully. She really looks the same as all other babies, in Jaskier's personal opinion. Nothing about her suggests that Destiny has picked her for some greater purpose. Would you like to hold her? What? Jaskier jerks back in panic. He's never held a baby before, but from what he's seen on the road, they mostly just leak various disgusting bodily fluids and cry. But it's too late. Mousak has already scooped up the small child with an easy familiarity and is placing her in Jaskier's stiff and terrified arms. You'd think you'd never held a baby before. The Druid laughs at the god as he instinctively jerks his arms up and down in what is supposed to be a soothing rhythm. The princess scrunches up her pin-sized nose in her sleep, and Jaskier stabs abruptly. On you'd be right, he whispers back, afraid of waking the tiny creature in his arms. Really? And you are how old? 27. This obviously surprises Mousak. And how long have you been as you are now? The Druid obviously knows something of what makes a river god. 27 years. A warm hand clasps Jaskier's shoulder in pity, but he ignores it. Instead, he stares down at the sleeping infant in his arms as she instinctively nuzzles her head into his chest, setting off a peculiar kind of buzzing feeling in the vicinity. She is so small, so trusting, so helpless. He can't imagine even for a moment what could convince him to drop her into a river. He gingerly uses his thumb to stroke the soft skin of her head. What's her name? He asks softly. Cyrilla. He carefully lifts her so that he can brush his lips to her forehead with a blessing. Welcome to the world, Cyrilla. Geralt has never seen Jaskier more eager to leave a place than he is to leave the town of Fairley. When Geralt had originally decided to take the water hag contract, the bard had tried to convince him that they should head further east instead, where they were apparently experiencing a drowner infestation. The drowner contract was worth half of the water hag one and was at least 2 days further right away. Seeing Jaskier's despondent face, refusing to crack a smile throughout their 2-day stay, almost makes Geralt wish he'd taken the drowner contract. Except Jaskier will not stop moaning, and it is getting on Geralt's last nerve. The bed is too hard, the food is awful, the men and women are ugly, and the country fashions are appallingly outdated. Geralt is almost ready to leave the moment he's dropped the hag's head in front of the alderman, if only to get Jaskier to cheer the fuck up. But by the time he gets back to town, the sun is already set and he's cold and hungry. Jaskier will just have to cope with one more night here. The bard is not impressed and stalks up to their room without ordering Geralt a bath, as he usually does. Geralt doesn't know why, but this break in routine puts him in a foul mood. It shouldn't. He's perfectly capable of ordering his own bath and does so whenever he is on his own. But it's something he's got used to Jaskier doing for him when they're together. He always orders Geralt's bath and fusses over the soaps and salts that the Witcher will never admit to a living soul he enjoys. He'll carefully wash Geralt's hair for him, and he never tugs too hard on the tangles. If the Witcher's shoulders are feeling especially tense, he'll dig in his thumbs until they relax. Then he'll let Geralt soak for as long as he pleases, while Jaskier wipes down and sorts out his discarded armor, filling his ears with mindless musings and half-formed songs. It's nice. He chews angrily on the mutton placed in front of him, teeth grinding up the overcooked meat with a ferocity usually reserved for monster slaying. The other patrons of the bar give him a wide berth until one foolhardy man drops down opposite the Witcher with 2 mugs of ale in his hands. "Yep, Witcher, look," he asks as he slides one of the mugs over to Geralt. He just grunts, not in the mood for conversation, but the man has bought him a drink, so he doesn't glower him away. "I got a job for you." He's a determined one. Geralt will give him that. "What's the monster, and what's the pay?" "We don't right know what it is," the man admits, "but we did pass the cap round the village, and we got together 100 crowns. Please, Master Witcher, you've got to help us." The man is sweating profusely, and Geralt can smell the fear and determination coming off him in waves. The sum isn't a lot for an unknown beast, but it is for what seems to be a relatively poor village, judging by the man's clothes and the slightly hungry look of his cheeks. Vesemir always said that Geralt's soft heart would get him into trouble. "I need to know what you do know." The man sags in relief. "It started about 2 weeks back. A mist came over the village, and there's nothing too unusual about that. We're quite high up near the mountains, except it didn't disperse. Then people started going missing. Old Nettie, the cunning woman, she was first. Found her ripped to pieces 3 days later, and she were all shriveled up, like she's been dead for weeks. Then Master Thorn, the blacksmith, disappeared 4 days later, and we found him in his tumble estate. Just as I left to try and find help, Bessie, my neighbor, was taken too. Please, I'm begging you, please help." Geralt already knows that he's going to agree, that soft heart thing of his. "I'll have a look. Thank you, thank you, thank you." The man is actually crying now. He wipes his eyes on a grubby sleeve. "I'm Eric, by the way," he sniffs. "Eric of Lonswell." Geralt of Rivia. "A white wolf," Eric nods. "I recognized you from Master Jaskier's bullets." "Bullets!" "Meet me here at sunrise tomorrow morning," Geralt tells him, having no interest in hearing what exactly Eric has learned of him from Jaskier's songs. He heaves himself up from the bench and wanders over to the innkeeper to order a bath. Jaskier is still pouting when Geralt arrives in their room. He's perched on the bed with his lute, strumming a discordant tune rather than his usual flowing melodies. "Got a new contract." "Thank fuck! That means we can leave tomorrow. Where are we going?" "North," Geralt says, sitting down next to him so he can begin to peel off his armor in readiness for his bath. "Lordswell." "No!" Geralt looks up startled at the pure venom that fills Jaskier's tone. The bard is, in a word, easygoing. He follows wherever Geralt leads and usually takes great joy in exploring whatever backwater their path happens to take them to. Sure, he can sometimes whine and prod Geralt petulantly to do what he wants, but he's never before slammed his precious lute down on the bed in order to stand in front of Geralt with rage simmering in the air around him. "For fuck's sake, Geralt! It's nowhere!
It's a nothing place! We're supposed to be getting out of this cesspit part of the world, and you want to take us further in! I won't go! I refuse! Then go elsewhere. Geralt snaps. This isn't a partnership, Jaskier. It's my job, and I've agreed to take the contract. If you don't like it, you're welcome to move on.
Time seems to freeze in the room as Jaskier gapes at him like a startled fish, blue eyes dangerously wet. Then they harden as the bard draws himself together in self-contained fury and storms from the room, leaving the tension suffocating Geralt behind him. He returns a short while later with a bottle of vodka and only one glass. He settles himself down in the chair in the corner, feet propped on the windowsill, and proceeds to ignore Geralt for the rest of the evening. He is such a child, Geralt thinks angrily as he's forced to scrub furiously at his own hair. Not one to be outdone when it comes to brooding, he is determined to ignore Jaskier just as thoroughly as he himself is being ignored, but the bathwater gets cold rather quickly and he still has to sort out his own armor. Jaskier may have won this round. When Geralt is finally able to crawl into bed, Jaskier doesn't quickly come to join him to leech off his heat the way he usually does. And why is Geralt feeling nostalgic for the two icy cold black Slavic calves' feet being pressed up against his calves? He stays where he is, looking out at the moon, sipping his vodka and being unnervingly silent. The next morning, the chair is empty and Jaskier's side of the bed is untouched. His things have been packed away and are missing from the room. Geralt's heart sinks like an anchor down into his stomach. Of all the things that could have driven Jaskier away, is it really going to be this? Except, as always, just when Geralt has resigned himself to the idea of Jaskier leaving him, the man goes and does the opposite. He is sitting by the bar, eyes rimmed with red and hair sticking up at hedgehog spikes. An empty bowl of porridge sits in front of him, with a full bowl resting next to him as a peace offering that Geralt silently accepts.
We'll head to Temeria after this, and we can keep going towards Novigrad.
Geralt knows that Jaskier has a fondness for that city, and he hopes this is recognized as his own apology. Eric arrives just as Geralt finishes his breakfast, and the Witcher is pleased to see Jaskier perking up a little when the man is visibly starstruck at meeting the good Master Jaskier.
How far is your village?
Geralt asks before any real posturing of Jaskier's can begin.
It's about 20 miles, sir. Should take us about 6, maybe 7 hours on foot, only I don't have a horse. The path's good, though. We just need to follow the bank cuts upstream.
The journey passes quickly enough. While Jaskier isn't his usual chattering self, Eric's admiration of him does convince him to play a few of his more famous songs as they walk. It's obvious when they get close to Laird's well. A thick, chilling mist hangs in the air, creeping in through the cracks in Geralt's armor and chilling him to the bone. It obscures the path from even Geralt's sight, and more than once Jaskier manages to catch Geralt's arm and pull him back before he accidentally wanders into the river. Roach shakes her head restlessly and butts it against Geralt's. His horse is smart enough to know that this isn't an ordinary mist. The village itself is practically deserted, the weather causing its residents to seek refuge indoors. "Eric!" A sweet voice emerges from the fog, and a pretty woman holding a lantern slowly becomes visible as she carefully makes her way towards them.
"Sonja!"
Eric hurries ahead to sweep the woman into his arms.
"I did it, love! I found the Witcher! He and Master Jaskier have agreed to help!"
Sonja barely even glances at the two of them. "Bessie was found 2 days ago, and Anvald went missing this morning. Mama is packing her bag and insisted that we go stay with her sisters. She's 52, Eric, and she has a bad chest. This mist is killing her."
"Come, love, don't cry. Like I said, I got us a Witcher. He'll sort it. Just need to let him do his job. Have we got a place for them to stay in the meantime?"
"Oh, that his hut's been cleaned out."
"Well, isn't this jolly?" Jaskier bites out scathingly the moment they're left alone in their new accommodation. "I can practically feel the ghost of the old woman staring at me. I hope she's not expecting a show." "Jaskier."
Geralt sighs, his tolerance from that morning running out already. He could feel the tension forming in the bridge of his nose and creeping upwards with every petty comment.
"I mean, it's a dead woman's hut, Geralt. You didn't complain when I did that wyvern job 2 months back."
Jaskier lets out a huff and opens his mouth again. He never does know when to stop, but Geralt has had enough.
"Either explain your obvious problem with the place, or I will gag you, if only to get some damn peace." The bard's jaw snaps shut, and Geralt can make out a slight flush creeping its way up his ears in the candlelight. He waits, but he appears to have struck Jaskier dumb. It's only later, back to back under the firs, as the fire slowly dies in the hearth, that Jaskier speaks up. I was born around these parts. Geralt hums. He vaguely remembers Jaskier mentioning that he'd been born in Aedirn. Wasn't here long. Wasn't really wanted. For a man who strives to make himself at home wherever he goes, that must have stung. How old had he been when he moved to Sintram? Well, help me get rid of the wraith, and they'll be singing your praises for the next 3 generations. Jaskier turns to face him, propping himself up on one elbow. You think it's all right? Geralt rolls over onto his back, glad that Jaskier is finally willing to look at him. The fog, the bodies they showed us. Yeah, most likely a wraith. Need to either find the body or find out what's keeping it here. Jaskier nods thoughtfully. Body might be easier. Village this small, and there will be any number of scandals that they won't be willing to tell outsiders about. He lies back down, but this time remains facing Geralt. He starts humming, and the familiar sound is comforting enough to allow the Witcher's eyes to droop. Hey, Geralt? Yes. What do you think about rhyming wraith with faith? Go to sleep, bard. It's Geralt's turn to be in a foul mood the next day. He spends the entirety of the daylight hours scouring the local surroundings for any hint of a corpse, the wraiths or the latest victims, to no avail. All the while the fog creeps under his skin, clinging to him more tightly than a desperate lover. He's grateful when he returns to the hut to find that Jaskier has laid out their spare clothes in front of the fire. The bard is shivering next to them, crouched near the embers and attempting to breathe some warmth into his numb-looking hands. I hope you've had more luck than me, he mumbles into his frozen fingers. Geralt groans as he squats down next to him. None. I take it the villagers were no help. Oh, they were as complimentary towards their neighbours as though they were the disgraced relative at their rich maintenance funeral. Nothing but kind words for each other. No one here can possibly have done anything that could have caused this. Did you point out to them that wraiths do not just appear as a result of good deeds, that someone, most likely from their village, will have had to have died a horrific, violent death for this misfortune to befall them? Given that you've never explained that properly to me before— No, I didn't. Well, feel free to go educate the peasants. Both Witcher and Bard look longingly at the dry clothes. Ulrich's all way in, Jaskier tells him grimly. He was the one desperate enough to seek you out, and it seems that he's the one who organized the collection for your fee. If we could get any more to crack, it should be him. With the lovely Shonsha away this evening, we could catch him defenseless. There is something about Jaskier's ability to analyze and read people that leaves Geralt more than a little spellbound. That he is willing to use his skill to Geralt's advantage is humbling. But stage after. No point in getting into dry clothes just to get them soaked. Take off your breastplate though. Shirt sleeves make you appear more approachable. The bard himself unlaces the upper half of his own doublet, allowing his embroidered chemise to soften the lines of his face. Geralt does as he's told, trusting that Jaskier knows what he's doing, and follows the bard to Eric's home. By the time they're allowed inside, their shirts are clinging wetly to their skin, and Eric insists on fishing out his illicit stash of rye vodka to warm them up. Only if you'll join us. Jaskier smiles winningly at the man. Geralt hides his smirk behind his glass as he watches his bard play the man before him. No mention of Geralt's investigation is brought up to begin with. Instead, Jaskier focuses Eric's attention on himself, his career and successes, which leads naturally onto the contracts of Geralt's he sings about, and the other unsung stories that Eric laps up eagerly. You do? I've seen some horrors, Eric whistles, impressed. Oh, I suppose so. Jaskier waves his glass drunkenly, though Geralt knows that he is almost completely sober. Eric, on the other hand, is completely sozzled and heading towards totally smashed. But there are horrors wherever one goes in the world. Even here, I imagine. Every small town has its local legends and horror stories, its own devils and shady characters. Eric snorts something that sounds suspiciously like Master something. Who? Geralt finally chimes in. Eric glances around guiltily, his drunken brain realizing that he's divulged more than he intended. Looking back at his two guests, he realizes they're done playing with him, homing in on him as a cat does a mouse. Your blacksmith, he admits. His daughter had an affair with the baker's boy, but he'd been feuding with the baker for years. The two ran off together just over 3 decades ago, but rumor has it that her dad caught her before she got away.
Jaskier whistles, but his shoulders are tense and his knuckles are white around his glass.
What do you think?
Geralt questions.
I think I met up with Alfred in Fairly before I met you, and he made no mention of a wife.
They don't hang around much longer, though Jaskier insists that Geralt put a very drunk Eric to bed. They leave him snoring with a bucket placed strategically at the side of his head.
What do you know about the blacksmith? I know he's dead. The mate already got him. But his friends were hanging around the local drinking hole, and they all like fishing. They have a hut that they built by the river, where they go to cast the line and escape their wives. They've even named the thing. It's the second siren, so naturally I asked what happened to the first. Naturally.
Geralt agrees, his mind already painting him a picture of the past. New places, same old stories.
Turns out it burned maybe 35 years back. They whipped the local delinquents, but they never confessed.
And they probably still angrily bore the marks of that unjust flogging. The blacksmith wouldn't be the first man to try and burn a crime scene from his memory. Did he burn his daughter inside the hut, or did he just kill her there and burn the place to hide the evidence? The next day, Geralt heads towards the river. The jagged ruins of the burnt-out hut rise from the mist like the prow of a ghost ship, and his medallion hums around his neck as he circles the ruins. It intensifies as he walks across a patch of grass round the back, and he hoists the shovel he's brought with him down from his shoulders and pushes it into the damp earth. It's not a deep grave. She had been dumped in it face first, and all he can make out of her is a slim build and long chestnut hair that clings to her back in muddy clumps. She's a fresh-looking corpse. The magic that's made her a wraith has preserved her body. He'll have to burn it and be prepared for a battle. Occasionally, wraiths move on peacefully with their earthly remains, but sometimes they'll appear for one more desperate fight. With as much care as he can manage, he pulls her cold, mud-caked body from the ground. Her neck has clearly been broken in a struggle. Geralt can almost picture it. The blacksmith would have been a big, strong, burly man in his prime, and this petite, slim little bird of a girl would have been unable to flutter away from him as he snapped her neck. She could only hit at 15 at most. She deserves more than a witcher standing alone at the edge of her grave and without the ability to give her a fitting eulogy. He should have brought Jaskier, but knows it would have been too dangerous for the bard if something were to go wrong. Instead, Geralt's left him sleeping, drooling, and snuffling into the furs. Lying on the ground in front of him, he does his best to wipe the worst of the mud from her face, remembering Vesemir once lecturing him about how a little respect can never hurt in these cases. His gloved fingers uncover a strange set of runes stretching across one of the girl's pale cheeks.
Fuck, this isn't good! This is no ordinary wraith! A penitent. He spits as he storms into Eric's hut. The man is clutching his tongue overhead by the fire, looking distinctly green, as his wife slams a bowl of porridge down in front of him. Jaskier also sits at their table, already halfway through his own bowl. Sorry, Eric groans. Your wraith is no ordinary wraith. It's penitent. Someone has called it here for revenge, but they've bungled it. The penitent should have disappeared after it murdered the guilty party, but whoever cast the curse was not a trained magician. They used the wrong runes to bind the spirit here, and this wraith has lingered on. It'll keep on killing indiscriminately. But you can stop it, Master Witcher, right?
Eric peers fearfully up at him.
Not at this point. The girl who's been brought back as the wraith, her body won't burn. You need to get the person who cast the curse to break it. That'll be us heading back to Farley then.
Jaskier taps his spoon against his empty bowl grimly.
This Alfred, the one who failed to escape with the daughter, he's the most likely candidate, assuming, of course, that we're right in suspecting that the blacksmith was the intended target.
They don't make it back to Farley that day, and are forced to set up camp by the river, but at least south of Lardswell the sky is clear, and the temperature not unpleasant. The water looks inviting, but Geralt knows the current here is deceptively swift. It could easily carry him far downstream if he were to lose his footing on the riverbed, so he doesn't risk a swim despite the sweat clinging to his brow and back. At some point in the night, he thinks he hears the splash of someone entering the water. He looks toward Jaskier's bedroll and finds it empty, as that idiot really decided to go for a midnight swim. Except when he sits up to yell at the bard to get back to bed, the river is empty.
Jaskier,
he calls, but there is no response.
I should go find the fool, he thinks, but his eyelids are drooping. He doesn't notice the medallion around his neck humming as he slides back down into his bedroll, already fast asleep. When he wakes up, Jaskier is there, and the incident in the night feels more like a dream than reality. The sun has only just risen, and they enter Farley again, but Eric had told them that Alfred had taken up his father's trade and now runs a bakery in town. Bakers are early risers, and they find the man round the back of his shop closing the iron door of a massive oven.
I take it you're not here to buy bread.
Alfred eyes Geralt's medallion and sword.
Reckon I guess Wail should be looking for me.
He juts out his chin defiantly.
Well, you'd best just run me through then. I'm not saving him. Not after what that fucking bastard did to my Julie. And my Julian.
No. Jaskier steps forward with hands raised placatingly, and is close to each other. Geralt is struck by how similar the two men look. All Alfred needs is brown instead of flaxen hair, and he could be Jaskier's older brother. The same lips and ears, and both have the same kind of long-fingered hands, though they put them to very different uses. Had there been any recognition between the two of them, Geralt would have thought they were family.
No one needs to be brought through.
Jaskier continues, using the strange power he has to put people at ease, to lead Alfred over to a bench by the oven.
Julie was your sweetheart, yes? Julian? My son.
And the bravery the baker was displaying moments earlier is gone, as his voice cracks and his entire body trembles.
It killed my wee boy before I ever got to hold him.
And he is weeping now. Geralt waits for Jaskier to comfort the man soft as he is, but Jaskier doesn't. He's gone rigid in his seat, and his heartbeat has doubled in speed. He looks to Geralt with a wild, lost look, and Geralt is unsure what he's expected to do.
What happened?
He asks, stiltedly, trying to say what Jaskier might if Jaskier were not currently doing an effective impression of a tree stump.
Julie got pregnant. We tried to hide it. We just needed to get enough coin to leave. I've been stashing it away for months, hiding it under my bed. But the babe came early. I got her to old Nettie, begged her not to tell Julie's father, but she did. He came storming into Nettie's hut and beat me bloody. Then he grabbed the baby and left. Came back a short time later without the bairn and told us he drowned him.
Alfred put his head in his hands. Uncontrolled sobs racked his entire body. He seems to shake Jaskier out of whatever stupor he's entered, and he places a tentative hand lightly on Alfred's shoulder, fingers twitching in the parody of a squeeze. He's white as a ghost. Dead babies are not new to Geralt. It's one of the sad truths of life. The world is harsh and cruel, and man is often proved to be its equal. But Jaskier, he knows, has a much more optimistic view of humanity. He looks for wonder and hope everywhere. There is none to be found here.
I needed to get Julie out, away from him. Staying in that place after that was eating her alive from the inside. I got a message to her. We were to meet by the river hut, but he must have found out, because by the time I got there, she was dead.
Geralt finishes for him.
So you buried her and set fire to the hut. Ran all night, nearly broke my neck in the dark. Didn't stop till I got here. My uncle used to own this bakery, and he took me in. Had the curse. Got it from a mage passing through. But that was back then, almost 30 years ago. It didn't work.
Curses could be tricky, and this one had been inexpertly cast by a distraught boy. It was quite possible it had just taken 3 decades to take effect, or something random had suddenly triggered it out of hibernation.
Well, it's working now,
Geralt tells him harshly.
And your precious Julie has been dragged back here as a mindless spirit. She's in pain, she's angry, and she's killing everyone she can, not just your intended victims. You think that's what she would have wanted? Renounce the curse. I want him dead, Alfred wails. I need him to be dead. And he is. Julie ripped him apart. But she's killed 3 others since then, and she'll keep killing. Your sweetheart, and your son.
Jaskier gets out through seemingly strangled vocal cords.
They'd want you to lift the curse. They'd want you to leave that place behind. Be happy.
Alfred turns to Jaskier, looking up at him with tears creating rivers down his cheeks.
How? How do I be happy? How do I lift the curse? You come with us and you say goodbye to Julie and burn her body, so she can move on.
Geralt tells him. Julie is where Geralt left her, placed just inside the shelter of the ruined hut. Alfred grips Jaskier's shirt, and the bard is forced to use Geralt's frame to support them both, as the man wails against him. Years of pent-up grief pour from him until he subsides into quiet, weary gasps. Tears run down Jaskier's cheeks as well, and Geralt just wants to get him away from this place. He should have taken the Drowner contract. The bard is flamboyant and loud and one of the most irritating men Geralt's ever met, but he wouldn't want him any other way. It's what makes Jaskier one of the best men Geralt's ever met. When Alfred sets the fire, Geralt is fully prepared for the wraith to appear, and he knows it will not be pretty. Unlike the wraith's physical remains, the spirit does decay, and a rotting corpse makes its way out of the mist towards them. The Witcher keeps one hand on his sword in case she decides to attack. But she just hovers above her body, looking her fill at Alfred being held up at Jaskier's side. And she vanishes, and it's over.
We should head back to Laird's well.
Geralt breaks the silence that settled over them.
I need to collect my coin, and we left half our things at Nettie's hut.
Jaskier still looks withdrawn.
I'll stay here with Alfred for a bit longer. I'll meet you here.
Except Jaskier's not there when Geralt returns. Neither is Alfred. The mist has lifted, and Geralt searches by the hut for Jaskier's tracks. He and Alfred split by the shore near the hut. Alfred's heavier boots heading south back to Fairley, and Jaskier's much lighter step heading upstream. It's there Geralt finds him. He scrambled down the street riverbank, dotted in yellow buttercups, discarded his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and waded into the shallows of the river. The sun is now shining through the clean air, highlighting the dried tear tracks on his cheeks, and he seems completely still. Unnaturally so. Geralt slides down the bank to join him. He does off his boots and socks and steps into the cool water. Jaskier's head jerks round to face him. Blue eyes, the same color as the river, stare at him in some sort of amazement.
Ready to leave this cesspit of a nothing place?
He fails to completely recall Jaskier's description. He settles next to the bard, enjoying the way the water ripples and plays around his feet. He lets himself stand close, shoulder brushing Jaskier's. A bit of comfort, the only way he knows how. But Jaskier always likes to push for more from Geralt, and he pulls back slightly so he can rest his head on the offered shoulder and stare out at the river and the village in the distance.
I think I'd like to stay here, just for a few moments longer.